Managed Mentoring Guide for Getting Started in Beekeeping. Building Hive Equipment. I am Kevin England. Welcome to Building Boxes. If you follow a few basic steps and take your time, you will find that building boxes is not that hard. In this lesson, we'll cover setting up your workplace, cover some tips on gluing and nailing, walking through the fabrication process, and discuss various tools and techniques to make the job easier. And then we'll cover the most important parts to ensure that your boxes are true and level. We'll get started by setting up your workspace. As you begin to formulate a plan, one of the first considerations you might want to give some thought to is where can you set up a temporary workspace to fabricate your hives. Building hives should be considered a multi-step set of activities. You're going to nail and glue the pieces, then apply the primer coats, allowing them to dry, and when the primer is done, you're going to repeat the process for the top coat. Depending on how you plan to do it, you will need the appropriate amount of space, along with places to work where you can hammer and glue and paint. Some do it over a few sessions, and others do all of the steps from fabrication through paint contiguously, and really that's kind of your preference as to how you set it up. As you consider your space, also consider, as the slide says, temperature to operate for the comfort of painting and for gluing. Keep in mind, sometimes persistent off-putting odors from the glue and paint drying are in the space. We recommend dry fitting the pieces for the reasons outlined on the slide. When doing this, you are looking for any problems with the parts prior to assembly. This would be the best time to turn back to the manufacturer if you happen to discover any problems with any of the parts. At the core of the fabrication of boxes, you will be gluing and nailing the parts together. As such, there are a couple of tips to discuss. One of the skills, if you want to call it that, is learning how to use glue properly. As the slide demonstrates, there is a good way to proceed. The benefit of adhering to these simple tips will result in a better bond for your equipment, which is going to see years and years of service. To spread the glue, some use their fingers, others use a stick or other implements, wood stirrers for coffee, for example, which we covered in the last session for frames. In this example, one could use a kitchen silicone basting brush, and when the glue dries, it pulls right out, and you can put the tool in your toolbox to be used again. During the lesson for Langstroth equipment, we mentioned we would say more about nails to be used during assembly. We will reiterate that most of the suppliers sell the fastening hardware to go with the equipment you're purchasing. Now, sometimes you already have hardware at home, but you need to know if you're using the right size and style. Hopefully, the points here on the slide help guide you in matching the right fasteners, but one of the things you should do is put your nails in the holes that the manufacturers gave you for nailing and make sure that they're compatible and that your nails are not so big that they're going to split the wood while you're driving your nails. It might seem a luxury to take the trouble to purchase a clamping system, but it makes the job incredibly easier. There are times when wood does what wood does, and it would not come together, especially in the joints or hold the way you want it to. Clamps can both hold pieces square and true and exert force on wood where you're going to need it. They are truly a sound investment when it comes to fabrication, especially if you're not comfortable with woodworking skills. For the next few slides, we will take some time to go through the basics of building boxes. We'll proceed at a very basic understanding because some new beekeepers have little to no experience with this sort of thing. Now, given boxes sit upon one another when put into service, it's imperative that they be absolutely square and true. If they are not square to 90 degrees, or truly flat when sitting on a level surface, it could result in gaps that bees or pests can fit through and cause robbing and ventilation problems. For testing both square and true, a carpenter's square like the one pictured on this slide is a good choice, but know that there are a large number of alternative squaring tools that could be employed for this purpose. Before driving the nail, get in the habit of checking every single time that you have the handles facing out on all sides. It's an easy thing to miss. How do we know? Admittedly, we have done it ourselves. We do have 1 or 2 boxes in service that were built the wrong way, and it's an easy thing to do. Nailing the boxes is kind of like an art. You nail things at first to hold them together, and then you drive the nails with the intent to fasten and lock things in. There's a small window where you can adjust the wood to ensure that it is square and true. There's also some technique to ensure that you do not ding the wood as you set the nail. Clamping systems often can hold the boxes in their final shape so you could focus on hammering the nails. Sometimes, though, you need the aid of a device that delivers additional force. For that, consider the use of a moderate-sized rubber mallet. Also, source the right-sized hammers, as large framing hammers are too heavy for this type of work. A moderate-sized hammer is more fit for purpose. Sometimes, no matter how careful you are, nails go sideways. This slide offers some suggestions for one that simply just tip over. Sometimes you can employ a trick that twists the nail out by using a pair of needle nose pliers. As the slide says, even if a nail is moderately bent, avoid reusing it. It's often the case when you buy a set of nails from a manufacturer that they give you extras. They know that this goes on and you should have plenty left over when you're done with the job. Then there are the cases where the nails turn while being driven and it sticks out the side of the wood. These need to be fixed. Sometimes you can hammer them flat into the wood, but in most cases you really want to extract them. A hive tool is going to catch on this simplest point of anything that sticks out. Follow the steps on the slide to see if you can get the nail out, and sometimes you have to take a drill alongside the nail and pull it out with pliers. Just work on it, eventually you'll be able to free that nail. Another problem you may encounter is split wood. Since you're using glue in your gluing process, it's often not too hard to just glue the crack, bind it in some way, and seal it up. Sometimes you have to clamp it, and other times you may have to nail the crack closed, and you can maybe leave the nail in there as long as it's not sticking out. You can also temporarily run a wood screw into the split area and then back the screw out and fill the hole with glue or some sort of putty. When nailing boxes, there are several ways to proceed. You can nail one complete corner of the box and then the next until you're done, or you can build the entire box and set part of a corner, the other corner, the other corner, and the other corner, and then go around and finish fastening until you have everything locked in. Sometimes the choice of how you proceed is set by whether you're working with clamps or not and how many clamps you have. The choice of how to proceed is really kind of up to you, and there's no superior way whether you do one corner or another. It's always coming down to making sure that you have the box square and true. Now do keep in mind that you're gluing the corners, and that plays a factor in how you proceed because the glue is going to dry if you take too long. You might glue one corner, nail that corner, and then move on to the next one. Again, just use common sense. Most times when you use this type of glue, the glue is open, meaning stays wet long enough for you to be able to take whatever approach you want. Whatever way you go, the most important thing you do is keep checking. Once you nail something, it's going to be set and locked. So test as you go and do not go so far that you cannot come back from a box that is twisted and not square. This seems to be missed by a lot of beekeepers. Frame rests are very simple to nail in and protect your rabbits from damage via your hive tool. They're inexpensive and they only require a handful of nails to fasten. This closes out this presentation. In our next lesson, we'll give you a primer on painting hives, tips and tricks of how to go about it, how to source and select your bees, along with advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons of packages and nukes. And then we'll move into some of the things you need to know about keeping bees in your neighborhood, including beekeeping is local. If you have questions, you can ask at our next online session, or you can send an email to the address on the slide. If you're watching from YouTube, you can leave a comment below, and we'll just say thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next lesson.